There was a shrimp tail in my jacket pocket. I still don't know how it got there. The weird part? It was warm. Not fresh warm, body warm. Like someone had just put it there. On purpose. But I didn't say anything. I just slipped it out quietly, dropped it under the table, and kept smiling like everything was normal. Around me, the room buzzed with clinking glasses, muffled laughter, and that fake jazz playlist they always use at chain steakhouses to make you feel like you're somewhere expensive. Everyone was laughing too hard at things that weren't funny. I remember that part vividly. It was like they were trying too hard to enjoy themselves. The whole table was tilted slightly, physically and emotionally, toward her, like a solar system around one smug little sun. And I was the moon. Or maybe Pluto. Something cold and barely invited. She had on this gold dress. Not yellow. Not champagne. Gold. And she was glowing. The kind of glowing that comes from guilt or adrenaline. Or both. I should have known. She tapped her glass with a fork. I want to say something real quick, she said, standing up. God, I wish she hadn't. The next 5 minutes, maybe 6, I wasn't counting, felt like a carefully rehearsed stand-up routine. Except the jokes weren't about her. They were about me. About how I leave the toilet seat up. How I forgot her birthday that one year. How I spent 3 weeks building a shelf that collapsed when she put a single candle on it. And everyone laughed. Harder than they needed to. Then she paused, looked at me like a cat about to drop a dead bird on the carpet. And she said something so specific, so humiliating, so nakedly cruel, that I swear I heard the waitress stop walking behind me. The table erupted. I sat there smiling, like a ventriloquist dummy waiting for someone to pull the string in my back and tell me what to do. That's when I stood up. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough to make my napkin fall from my lap to the floor like a little white flag. You think that was funny? I asked quietly. She blinked. The others did too. But I wasn't talking to them. I was going to wait, I said. I was actually trying to protect you. Then I pulled out my phone. No shouting. No drama. Just a few taps. Then I turned the screen toward her. Her smile died. The air left the room. No one was laughing anymore. But that was just the beginning. What I showed her wasn't even the worst part. Not by a long shot. She didn't say anything. For the first time in a long time, she had nothing to say. Her mouth opened just slightly, like she was about to form a word, but it never came. Her eyes were fixed on the screen. My screen. The one showing a WhatsApp conversation, a photo of a hotel room, and her, wearing a robe I'd never seen before, standing barefoot next to a man I had seen before. The man in the photo was Caleb. And before you ask, no, I didn't know right away. He wasn't some family friend or coworker I was suspicious of. No, Caleb was just the guy from the gym. She once mentioned offhand while scrolling her phone on the couch. Crazy tattoo, she said. Looks like a haunted tree or something. I didn't think twice. But here he was, with his haunted tree tattoo and his hand around her waist like it belonged there. And she was leaning into him in that unmistakable way you don't do by accident. Everyone at the table was quiet now. The kind of quiet that burns your ears. I could hear the buzz from the overhead lights. The scrape of someone's fork as they adjusted it on their plate. Even the sound of her sister shifting uncomfortably in her seat. It was like the whole night had snapped out of its drunken trance and crashed headfirst into the ice-cold wall of reality. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. I actually laughed. I didn't want to, but it just slipped out. That line. That same recycled line every cheater on earth thinks will somehow change the physics of betrayal. I didn't mean for this to happen. So I leaned in. Not to intimidate her, not to make a scene, just to make sure she could hear me. I was going to delete it, I said. All of it. I wasn't even going to ask. I thought maybe I was overreacting. That maybe he was just a friend. I paused and looked at her straight in the eye. But then you made me the punchline at my own birthday dinner. You stood up and humiliated me like I was disposable. And that's when I realized, you don't care if I know. You want me to know. You wanted a reaction. She tried to speak again, but this time her voice cracked. Franklin, please. Don't call me that. I cut in, my voice steady but low. He calls me that. I saw the texts. Franklin has no idea. Poor guy. That's what you wrote. Her face turned white. She glanced around the table, suddenly remembering we weren't alone. But it was far too late for damage control. Every face around us told the same story. Confusion, discomfort, disbelief. And maybe, just maybe a little bit of pity. I didn't want pity. I wanted the truth. So I asked the one question I'd been holding back for weeks, the one that sat in my chest like a cinder block every night while she texted Allison from work and took long showers with her phone face down on the sink. How long? No theatrics. Just those two words. Me, standing above her, phone still in hand, shrimp tail still in my jacket pocket like some twisted good luck charm. She looked down. Her shoulders trembled. And then she said it. Since February. 7 months. 7 months of lying, sneaking, gaslighting, joking with me about my paranoia, blaming my anxiety, accusing me of being too insecure. 7 months of sharing a bed with me while dreaming about someone else's hands. I didn't flip the table. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I just stood there, nodded once, then took a deep breath and said, "You'll need to find another ride home." Then I turned and walked out of that restaurant, past the hostess stand, past the valet, past the big glass windows where I could feel every single person still staring. And when I stepped outside, the cold hit me like a brick wall. But it felt good, clean, honest. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that this wasn't over. Not even close. Because the next morning, Caleb showed up at my front door. And he wasn't alone. The knock came at 7:12 a.m. Sharp, deliberate. Not like a neighbor, not like a delivery guy, not like someone unsure of whether they're at the right house. 3 knocks. Then silence. I was still wearing the same clothes from the night before. I'd barely slept. My phone was at 5%, and I'd ignored 6 missed calls from Delaney and 1 from an unknown number. I didn't want to deal with anything. But something about the knock didn't let me ignore it. I opened the door halfway. There he was. Caleb. Up close, he looked different. Taller than I remembered. Muscular, but not in the way you'd expect. More like someone who used to be dangerous, then got quiet about it. Tattoos crawling out from under the collar of a dark gray hoodie. A plastic bag in one hand, and the other hand stuffed into his jacket pocket like he was hiding something. "I don't want trouble," he said before I could even speak. His voice was low, tired, like he'd been practicing what to say and still didn't get it right. "You've got it," I said, and started to close the door. But then he held up the bag. Inside were 4 things: a phone, a white envelope, a set of car keys, and something that looked like a flash drive. "She doesn't know I'm here," he added quickly. "But she will." I stared at the bag, then at him. "What is this? Some kind of peace offering?" "No," he said. "It's insurance. For you. For me. For everyone involved." And that's when the second car pulled up. A black sedan, tinted windows, engine still running. It didn't park like someone visiting. It idled like someone watching. And Caleb's eyes darted toward it with the same kind of fear you don't fake. "You need to come inside," I said, my tone shifting, because whatever this was, it wasn't just a cheating scandal anymore. Caleb stepped in. I locked the door behind him. He didn't sit, just stood there in the foyer, looking at the bag in his hand like it might explode. "I didn't know about you at first," he said. "She told me she was separated, that you were living apart, that you were unstable. You know, that you cheated first." I almost laughed again, but it came out more like a cough. He continued. "By the time I found out she was lying, it was already a thing. I'm not proud of it, but that's not why I'm here." He handed me the flash drive. "There's video. Not like, look, it's not that kind of video. It's her, talking, to someone else. Someone I don't recognize. Saying things that didn't make sense until last night." "Things like what?" I asked. He looked up at me. "She said you weren't just someone she married. You were someone she was placed with. That the whole marriage was part of a plan. That you were useful." Useful. That word landed in my stomach like a swallowed nail. I took the bag and stepped back, needing space to think. "You're telling me my wife, what? Works for some organization?" "I don't know," he said. "But the guy in that car has been following me for 2 days." "And your wife?" "She met him. Twice. In private. I watched from across the parking lot." We stood there, 2 strangers connected by the same woman, holding a bag that felt heavier than it should have. That's when the power went out. Complete blackness. In the middle of daylight. My phone died in my hand with a tiny vibration, and the lights flicked off with a sound that felt unnatural. Caleb didn't move. Neither did I. The sound of tires on gravel outside. Then silence again. "This is bigger than either of us," Caleb whispered. "And I think your wife's not done lying." We sat in the dark for what felt like hours, even though it was probably 5, maybe 6 minutes. Caleb stood near the door like a bodyguard with no clear orders. while I paced between the living room and the front window, trying not to make any sudden movements. I kept peeking through the blinds, expecting to see the black sedan still idling outside, but the street was empty now. The silence was worse than if it had still been there. It meant whoever was watching us wanted us to wonder. I plugged the flash drive into the old laptop I keep in the hall closet. It's not connected to Wi-Fi. I bought it cheap years ago when I was still pretending to write a novel. Now it just sits under a stack of expired coupons and broken remotes. But right now, it was the most secure thing I owned. When the folder opened, there were only 2 files. One was a video labeled DS_7_02_final MP4. The other was a Word document named Rules. I opened the video first. Delaney appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a hotel room. Not our home. Not Caleb's either. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, angled toward someone off camera. She looked tired, like she'd been crying, or not sleeping, or both. Her hair was tied up in that loose way she does when she's annoyed. Not the public version of Delaney. The real one. The one I hadn't seen in weeks. "I told you I'd do it," she said. "He trusts me. Too much, honestly. It's pathetic. He still thinks this marriage can be fixed." A voice responded, low, heavily distorted. The words were warped, but the tone was clear, impatient. "Stick to the plan." She nodded, then paused. "But I'm telling you." He's starting to ask questions. "If he finds out what the drive contains." The voice cut her off. "He won't, as long as you follow the rules." And then the video ended. No timestamps. No date. No location. Just a black screen. I didn't speak. Neither did Caleb. We both just sat in the heavy, stale air, the kind that fills a room when the truth walks in and takes a seat between you. I clicked on the second file. The document was only a few lines long. A bulleted list. Simple. Chilling. Do not engage Franklin emotionally. Maintain intimacy only to prevent suspicion. Do not allow Franklin access to the shared desktop. If Franklin discovers the file, leave immediately and contact Supervisor D. Above all, Franklin must never find out about Phase 2. I felt my mouth go dry. My heart wasn't racing. It had stopped altogether. There's a kind of silence your body experiences when your identity starts to dissolve. When everything you assumed about your own life, your marriage, your home, your decisions, starts to feel like someone else's script. Caleb stood behind me now. "She told me you worked in logistics," he said, slowly. "That you moved data for international freight. That you hated it." I nodded. "Yeah, I do." "But you don't know what you're moving, do you?" I turned to look at him. "What?" He leaned down, voice low. "Franklin, the packages you've been shipping? The servers? The coded invoices? They weren't just for corporate customers. They were moving signals. You've been unknowingly relaying information for over 2 years." I stood up. "Fast. No, that's not possible. I just handle the back-end orders. Inventory. Warehouses. I've never even seen." But then I stopped. Because I remembered something. Last year, my company asked me to install a system update that required me to download a set of encrypted files onto a personal USB drive. I didn't think much of it. They said it was temporary. Said IT would handle the rest. I never asked what it was for. I just did it. Like always. Like a good little middleman. And now it felt like the ground under me had never existed. Caleb didn't push. He just watched as it all sank in. "You weren't just useful to her," he said. "You were essential." That's when my phone buzzed back to life. Emergency power. One notification. A voicemail. From Delaney. I played it on speaker. Her voice was tight, clipped, trembling beneath forced calm. "Franklin, I know you found it. I know you and Caleb talked. I need you to listen to me very carefully. You need to leave the house. Now. Don't take anything. Don't call anyone. Just go to the lake house. You remember the one. There's more you don't understand. And if you stay, they'll come looking." And then she said something that shook me to my core. "They know you've seen Phase 2. Click. The drive to the lake house felt like moving through a dream that didn't want me in it. The roads were half flooded from last night's rain, the trees bending low like they were whispering things I wasn't supposed to hear. Caleb insisted on driving. I didn't argue. I was too busy trying to process the voicemail. Her voice, the way she said they'll come looking. It didn't sound like fear for herself. It sounded like fear for me. I'd only been to the lake house once before. Her family owned it, tucked deep in the woods 2 hours north, a crooked little structure that smelled like pine and old paperbacks. The kind of place people go to forget things. Or hide them. We got there just after noon. The sky had turned gray again, like the world was trying to match the mood inside my head. The driveway was littered with wet leaves and broken branches, and the air was heavy with the smell of rain and smoke. The place looked abandoned, but the lock on the front door was new. Polished steel. Installed recently. Someone had been here. Caleb stepped in first, sweeping the room like a cop from an old movie. I followed, slower, my eyes darting around, trying to remember details from the last time I'd been here. The bookshelf was still there, though half the titles were gone. The framed photo of Delaney and her mother on the wall had been turned face down. On the table sat a manila folder. My name was written across it in neat black marker. Not Franklin, just F. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were photocopies of documents I didn't recognize, shipment receipts, coded invoices, and what looked like authorization forms from a government agency I'd never worked with. Some had my signature on them, or at least something that looked exactly like it. Caleb leaned over my shoulder, reading silently. Then he pointed at the bottom of one page. There, he said. Supervisor D. The same name from the rule list. I scanned the lines again. Most of it was jargon, logistical phrases, and encryption IDs that meant nothing to me. But one thing stood out. A map, roughly printed, with a red circle around a small area near the northern border. Next to it, 2 words written in pen, Phase 2. This doesn't make sense, I muttered. I don't even. And then the power flickered. Again, the exact same way it had at my house. Caleb froze, eyes locking on the window. A car engine in the distance, muffled by the rain, getting closer. We need to move, he said. Now. But something in me snapped. The confusion, the lies, the humiliation, it all boiled over. No, I said. I'm done running from shadows. You tell me right now, what is Phase 2? Who is she working for? Caleb hesitated. His jaw tightened. You don't get it. I wasn't supposed to find out either. I was part of it. I was supposed to get close to her, monitor the communications between her and you. But she flipped it. She made me fall for her instead. I think she planned it from the start. My chest went cold. You were spying on us? I was spying on you, he said flatly. But I didn't know why. I just followed orders. Until she went off script. The sound of tires crunching over gravel grew louder. Caleb grabbed the flash drive from my pocket. They're tracking it, he hissed. We can't stay here. But before we could move, a new sound filled the air. A single car door slamming shut, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps on wet ground. Then came the voice. Calm. Male. Familiar. Franklin. It called through the door. You've seen things you shouldn't have. Caleb pulled out a small black pistol I didn't know he had. My pulse started to hammer. The voice outside spoke again, closer this time, smooth as glass. Delaney didn't betray you, Franklin. You were never her husband. You were her handler. Caleb looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us spoke. Then the door handle turned. The door didn't open. It just kept turning, slow and methodical, like whoever was on the other side wanted us to hear every click of the old brass mechanism as it moved. Caleb raised the gun, but his hand wasn't steady. His eyes locked on the frame. I took one step backward, my heart thudding in my throat, mouth suddenly dry. I don't know what I was expecting to see when it opened. Some suited figure from a government agency? One of those Supervisor D types in sunglasses with a fake name and a flat voice? What I wasn't expecting was my brother, Daniel. I hadn't seen him in 4 years. Not since our father's funeral, and even then, we'd barely spoken. He was always the better one, smarter, cleaner, more put together. Government job. Security clearance. The kind of guy who made people feel safe, even when he was lying through his teeth. And now he was standing in the doorway of a dusty lake house with rain soaking through the shoulders of his black coat, looking at me like I'd just woken up from a coma I never knew I was in. Frank, he said, as if nothing had happened. As if he wasn't the voice behind the door. As if he hadn't just shattered the floor beneath my life. You need to sit down. I didn't sit. I didn't move. Neither did Caleb. Daniel sighed, stepped inside, and gently closed the door behind him. I tried to keep you out of this. So did she. But you were too curious. You told me to leave. I said slowly, my voice foreign to me. Back at Dad's funeral. You said, walk away from all of it. Get a normal life. I thought you meant the family drama. I thought. You were never meant to remember. He cut in, looking almost sorry. We built a life for you. Clean, boring, controlled. Logistics, a suburban marriage, quiet weekends. You had no idea how much work it took to build a silence that deep. Caleb looked between us, confused. He's not a handler. He didn't know anything until now. He didn't remember anything until now, Daniel corrected. That's the difference. Something inside me cracked. What the hell are you talking about? Daniel pulled something from his coat. A small leather-bound book, worn at the edges, wrapped with a faded red ribbon. He held it out to me like a peace offering. Open it. Page 39. My fingers didn't want to work. I untied the ribbon and opened it with shaking hands. Page 39 was handwritten. The ink was familiar. Sloppy, slightly crooked. My handwriting. February 2nd. Delaney moved into phase 1. Doesn't trust me yet. Suspect emotional resistance to neural syncing. Caleb remains unaware. Must maintain cover until extraction. If compromised, eliminate Caleb. My vision blurred. I flipped through the pages, every one of them written by me. Dozens of entries. Surveillance logs. Emotional tracking. Tactical notes. All in my handwriting. All signed F. This isn't real, I said, my throat tightening. This is a setup. It's a restoration, Daniel replied. We didn't erase your life, Franklin. We archived it. You asked for it to be locked away. Said you wanted out. That the job was eating you. That you were falling in love with her. You begged us to let you forget. And we did, he added softly. Until now. I couldn't breathe. My knees gave out, and I collapsed into the old wooden chair by the fireplace. The room tilted sideways. Caleb was pacing now, gun still drawn but forgotten. You're saying he was my handler, and he erased his own memory? For her? She wasn't supposed to get to him like that, Daniel said, his voice hardening. Delaney was supposed to bait a different target. But somewhere along the line, she flipped the roles. Started manipulating Franklin. Started changing the mission without authorization. Then she disappeared. That's when we realized she was building something off-grid. Phase 2, I whispered. Daniel nodded. And you were the key, Frank. You've been her only blind spot. The only variable she didn't anticipate. That's why she left you clues. Because somewhere, deep down, she still thinks she can bring you back. I stared at the journal in my hands. My own words. My own thoughts. A version of myself I didn't even know existed. A man who once made decisions with people's lives like he was moving chess pieces. A man who betrayed someone who later became his wife. And now she was out there. Alone. Running. Planning something I couldn't begin to understand. You said she didn't betray me, I muttered. But she lied. She planned it all. No, Daniel said quietly. She didn't betray you. She freed you. What she's doing now, she's doing for you. You just don't remember why. Outside, a second car pulled up. Doors opened. Footsteps on wet gravel again. They're here to take you back, Daniel said. Unless you'd rather disappear with her instead. I looked at Caleb. He didn't move. He was watching me like a man waiting to see which way the bomb would fall. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know which side I was on anymore. The moment the door handle stopped turning, everything in the room went still. Caleb was gripping the pistol so tightly his knuckles had turned bone white. I had one hand pressed against the table for balance, the other hovering near the envelope we hadn't even opened yet. The air felt like it was thickening by the second, every sound outside magnified. The slow, crunching footsteps on wet gravel, the quiet hiss of wind curling through the trees, the faint creak of old boards under shifting weight. But when the door finally opened, it wasn't who I expected. It wasn't some agent or a stranger in a suit or a faceless enforcer from some covert operation. It was Daniel, my older brother, the man who vanished from my life 4 years ago and didn't leave a single forwarding address. I hadn't seen him since our father's funeral, where he left without saying goodbye. And now he was standing in the frame of the lake house, dressed in a soaked black coat, rain streaking his face, and looking at me with that same unreadable stare he always wore when he was about to say something unforgivable. Franklin, he said calmly, like this was some overdue family check-in. We don't have much time. They're not far behind me. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My silence said everything. The last time I'd heard his voice, it was telling me to walk away from my own life. Back then I thought he meant grief. I thought he meant family. But now, it was clear, he meant all of it. Caleb raised his gun halfway and said nothing. His instincts didn't like the way Daniel walked into the room. slow and confident, eyes sweeping over every corner like he already knew the layout by heart. Like this place wasn't some cabin in the woods, but a chessboard, and we were both just pawns caught mid-move. I told you to stay away, Daniel said, speaking directly to me now. This was never your war to fight. Then what was it? I said, my voice sharper than I expected. Because I've been lied to by everyone I trusted. My wife, this guy, and now you show up with riddles and timing that's a little too perfect? Forgive me if I don't throw my arms around you. You were happy, Daniel said plainly. You were safe. That's what you wanted. You mean you made me forget? I stepped toward him. You erased me. You and your team. Or hers. I don't even know anymore. Daniel reached into his coat slowly, carefully, and pulled out a weathered leather notebook, wrapped in a red string. He held it out to me like a fragile object. You gave us permission, he said. You didn't want to be that man anymore. You said it was killing you. I took the journal without realizing it. My hands moved on their own. The leather was damp but warm, and as I untied the string and flipped through the pages, my stomach began to drop. Each page was filled with handwriting I instantly recognized as mine. But the words didn't feel like mine. They were cold, surgical, names, coordinates, emotional profiling notes about Delaney, mentions of calculated trust thresholds, code phase validations, and behavioral reroutes. Page after page of surveillance logs. All about her. You were her handler, Frank, Daniel said. You met her during Operation Lamplight. You were assigned to monitor her for 6 months, evaluate her psychological adaptability under synthetic domestic conditions. She wasn't a threat then. She was a tool, a prototype for embedded neural acclimation. What the hell does that even mean? It means she wasn't just your wife. She was your test subject. I staggered back a step. I could hear Caleb mutter, Jesus Christ, under his breath, but my own thoughts were louder than anything around me. I loved her, I said. Whatever else was true, I loved her. Daniel nodded. And she loved you back. That's when the mission became unstable. The rain had started again, harder this time. A sudden crack of thunder made the window rattle. She wasn't supposed to form attachments, Daniel continued. But she did. She reprogrammed herself around you. And when she found out about the memory suppression order, she flipped. She stole phase 2 and disappeared. I looked at him, blinking like I could somehow wake up from this if I stared hard enough. What is phase 2? Daniel's face hardened. A data packet stored in a dormant neural frame, encrypted with 2 biological keys, hers and yours. The only way to activate it is for both of you to physically reconnect. And she's been planning exactly when and where. I suddenly remembered the message she left me. Go to the lake house. There's more you don't understand. This was the plan. But I hadn't come alone. And now, standing in that room, journal in hand, brother in front of me, and Caleb behind me, something shifted. I wasn't just a man whose life was stolen. I was someone dangerous. Someone involved. Someone they once had to erase just to keep stable. And now they wanted me to remember. You have a choice, Daniel said. Come back with me. We restore your full memory. End this. Or follow her. Let her finish what she started. But you can't do both. You follow Delaney. There's no coming back. The room was spinning. I looked at Caleb. He stared back at me, wide-eyed, caught in a war he never meant to be part of. I looked at the journal, still open to the page where I'd once written, she's becoming unpredictable. Recommend termination if compromise escalates. Then I looked at the door, and I realized she was already here. The moment I turned toward the window, I saw her, soaked from the rain, standing just past the tree line, eyes locked on the cabin. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She stood tall, still, like she'd been waiting for me to remember. A silhouette against the gray sky. Not the woman who made jokes about burning casseroles or left coffee rings on my side of the desk. Not the Delaney I thought I knew. And yet, somehow still her. Everything in the room stopped. Daniel saw her too. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, she shouldn't be this close. But I was already moving toward the door. I didn't run. I walked through the threshold, into the cold rain, into the uncertainty, into the possibility that every part of my life, the pain, the lies, the betrayal, had all been leading to this single moment. Delaney didn't move. Her eyes followed me with a steadiness that should have scared me, but instead, grounded me. Why here? I asked. My voice cracked in the wet air. Because this is the last place you were truly yourself, she replied. I stared at her, torn between fury and longing, between needing answers and simply needing her. You used me, I said. You let me fall in love with you. I didn't let you, she whispered. I couldn't stop you, and I didn't want to. She stepped closer, rain dripping from her hair, her hand reaching slowly into her coat. Not for a weapon, for something small, metallic. She held out a thin capsule, no larger than a thumbnail. The second key, she said. I'm giving it to you. You can destroy it. You can walk away. You can go back to your brother, to your program, to your quiet house, and pretend none of this ever happened. Or, she stepped even closer now, eyes shining in the storm. Or we can leave. Both of us. No more handlers, no more phases. Just memories, real ones this time. We disappear. Together. Behind me, I heard the cabin door creak open. Daniel's voice carried through the rain. If you walk away with her, Franklin, you're done. No support. No memory recovery. No protection. You become one of them. I looked down at the capsule in my palm. It was light, insignificant in weight, but it carried the power to erase everything I'd built or remember everything I'd lost. And then I made the only choice that felt like mine. I dropped the capsule to the wet earth and crushed it under my heel. Delaney blinked, stunned for the first time since I'd seen her. I don't want to be anyone's project anymore, I said. Not yours. Not his. Not even my own. Her lip trembled, just slightly. I reached for her hand. We walked away together. Through the woods. Past the gravel road. Past the cars, the tech, the questions. No plans. No cover stories. No phase 2. Just rain and footsteps and the quiet agreement of two broken people choosing each other. Not because of programming, not because of secrets, but because, in the middle of a life built on control, lies, and machinery, they found something real. Something they never should have had. And finally chose to protect. Not the mission, not the memory, but love.